if you know that you are the social conditioning engine of the world that you live in, then I believe that that comes with some accountability. And that accountability is leave people better off than when they started.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of More Than Marketing. I'm your host, Arsha Mirsha, and today I'm joined by none other than Nichole Kelly. Hi, Nichole.
Hello.
Hey, good to have you.
Thank you.
So, Nichole, this is awesome. We're talking emotional intelligence today. We're going to talk about what it means and how to kind of get in tune with it. But a little bit about Nichole real quick. I've known her for the better part of 10 years. She's got like the better part of 20 years of marketing experience, right, Nichole? Like
Yeah.
you've been in, you ran your own agency.
Yeah.
You've worked with big brands.
Yeah.
You've worked in-house with startups and I like, so you've seen it all.
Yeah, big, small.
You manage teams.
Yeah, for sure.
And so this emotional intelligence is kind of near and dear to your heart, as I understand it, because over your time with working with teams, working with agencies, as an agency, you've seen and felt a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
I have.
Yeah.
I learned how to feel, I would say.
That's interesting. See, I like that. And I think if I am reading through this, like you experienced more productivity out of the teams you worked with, and you experienced better results for the client or clients when emotional intelligence was present.
Right. I mean, it comes down to ultimately, as leaders, we rely on the performance of our teams. And if we're really efficient leaders like I am, we tend to hire really intelligent, smart, highly productive people, right? Mm-hmm. People who are A players, as I like to call them. Mm-hmm. And when you're dealing with A players are highly motivated, likely many times obsessive about their trade, and they use what's called flow state in order to produce ridiculous results.
Right.
And they may not understand that that's what they're doing, but it is what they're doing. And scientific research is now showing that in the workplace, when teams are able to hit flow state, we have huge gains in productivity, huge gains in the ability to learn, huge gains in creativity and innovation, the things that we want as leadership from our teams. However, what I've found is that when you start to optimize flow state in your team, it kind of has a downside to it. And it's not talked about very often. You find this in between the lines of the research. When they start talking about that flow state, it kicks up all of these creative chemicals in your brain that you dump in order to get to flow state. Mm-hmm. And if you are optimizing yourself for flow state on a regular basis, like I've worked on with so many teams, then what happens is that ultimately every day you come in and drop all of your brain's chemicals that are responsible for regulating mood. Mm-hmm. And so when you drop all of those chemicals, your body needs time to replenish it. And we aren't giving ourselves the time to replenish it.
Right.
And so this can lead to anxiety, depression, and all of these cycles inside of your team that if you're not aware of what's happening, it can create really big pockets of problem in the team where you have employees who really stop performing all of a sudden and you don't know why.
Right.
Suddenly that top performer is really sad.
Yeah, and this is so the way I see it is kind of two prongs, right? When I hear marketing with emotional intelligence, one prong, which you're touching on right now, is the human producing the marketing work,
right.
Whether it's whether they're managing an ad campaign, doing a media buy, or probably more importantly in this case is the creative aspect of marketing. What is the concept of the campaign, or what does the creative look like design wise? Let's say that's one prong, the human doing the marketing, creating the marketing. And maybe the copy that they write also comes out of that, right? Yeah. And then the other end of it is the actual production, is what they produce, is the deliverable, and that's where like the copy comes out, or the timing, or the cadence of the emails, right? It comes out. So because that's the other end is the audience. How are they experiencing your message.
Exactly. So like let's just look at the life cycle of marketing.
Okay.
So in the life cycle of marketing, I'm a creative, I come up with an idea and I put together a campaign in order to express that idea. It involves several things. I've got graphics, I've got design, development, I've got copywriting.
Copy, yep.
I probably have QA involved in there somewhere. So there's all of these people who are touching the pot, if you
Yes.
will. Every single person is, if you will, transferring their energy into this pot that we are creating this co-creation of art that we're putting out into the marketplace. So you have this piece of it, which is the creative going in. So my emotional state when I'm creating that content matters.
It matters, yeah.
Right? Because I'm
It's like
storytelling.
That's the input.
Right.
If you think about it, I mean, that's the input. And we've all heard the saying in data, you know, garbage in, garbage out. If
Exactly.
the data is not clean, the integrity of the data is not, if it's just not there, if it's not clean, well, it doesn't matter. Your analysis, is inaccurate.
Right.
So the same thing goes in creative work.
Exactly. And so it's not necessarily about whether or not you're the copywriter writing the copy so much as that if you're in your flow state, your performance flow state, we're performance marketers, so there's this performance element, and you're in your flow state, you're putting your energy into this. And as you put your energy into it, just think about it. If I'm trying to write jokes and I'm coming from a place where I'm not really feeling funny, my jokes aren't going to be very good. So at best, I'm getting just crappy marketing on the back end of this. At worst, I could be getting something that is a little bit more dangerous, if you will. And I use these words very lightly because I think in context, any single piece of marketing has a limited effect. But when you look at marketing on a global scale and how much exposure we have, then you start to see how it bleeds into our lives. Yeah. So in this marketing piece, now I'm telling this story and I'm taking people on an emotional journey. I've heard it at conference after conference, sell to the heart, use emotions in your marketing. Right. But we're sitting here and we write to like a 6th grade level, but do we ever stop to consider like the lowest common denominator of the emotional state of our audience?
What is that?
Before we take them on a roller coaster of emotions?
What is the lowest common denominator of?
Well, I think it's all perspective, but I can tell you my lowest common denominator has been when I was suicidally depressed.
Okay.
And so like, would you do something different if the executive on the other end of your B2B marketing piece, if you knew that they were like suicidal, would you put them on an emotional roller coaster about cyber attacks?
Right. Would you still use fear-based messaging?
Would you still use fear-based messaging? And I'd say that we probably wouldn't.
Right.
But we don't even have a barometer for this right now. Like, sure. And while we could be raising the level of which we're writing to and starting to actually like help society have a better vocabulary, we're actually like really harming ourselves on the emotional side because what happens? So I get in, I create this marketing, I then put it out into the world, people absorb that marketing, and then what happens? Now they have these emotions. Well, where are we supposed to express emotions?
I don't know, at home with your family or at the gym? Hopefully. Right.
But like how many people in our society feel like they don't have an outlet for their emotions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a challenge. And us as marketers, like we have an impact. Marketers and advertisers, we have an impact, right? What is it? You see at a minimum 5,000, brand impressions a day, right? So that's amazing. Think about that. That's not, not obviously all on your computer screen or your phone screen. Like, you're walking and you open the fridge, there's a Coca-Cola there, you're going to see that, right? So we're getting all these impressions. So we as marketers have the ability to control that message.
Right.
So why not make it a better message? I think HubSpot did a survey, or they got this from somewhere, and I saw them publishing that trust is at an all-time low.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
In general, trust is at an all-time low for marketing, for in politics and marketing. I think politicians are 1% of people trust politicians, and then after that it's 4% for marketers. So yay, we beat out politicians. Like congratulations, right? But like and then it goes up from like firefighters have like a 60-something%.
Yeah.
So our goal should be to move up and make the world a better place. And in doing so, I think we can actually achieve better results.
Yeah. Well, think about this. Just like pull yourself back from your marketing campaign for a minute and just like look at the global view. In the global view, we have all of these people who have reasons of which we either work together or we don't, right? And most of these things are actually human created things. They're labels and, all of these things that are kind of human created. So if that's the case, and we start to look at their inputs, what you have behind the curtain of humanity is a social conditioning engine. And I believe that social conditioning engine is marketing.
Yeah,
It
we're certainly driving
we
it.
are doing the advertising, we're creating the media, the movies, the radio, like all of it. We create all of it, and it starts at such a young age. And so if you know that you are the social conditioning engine of the world that you live in, then I believe that comes with some accountability. And that accountability is leave people better off than when they started.
Yeah.
Can leave a positive trace behind you.
So Nichole, I agree with you, but I'm a CMO or I'm a marketer and I'm charged with getting results.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So now I'm speaking for, so I'm charged with getting results. This sounds to me like, yeah, of course I want to leave the world a better place. Okay, I already recycle and whatever, but and I drive an electric car. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up now, right? But when I go to work, my job is to get results. I need that click-through rate. I need that cost per lead to come down. And I need that cost per sale to come down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So will this help with that? That's what I imagine people are thinking.
Yeah. And so, I can give you some basic tests that I've run that essentially show that, yes, in practice, we believe that this works. But in scale, that's where we're at right now, is like, how do you do this at scale in a way that also delivers return on investment? Because this isn't about a trade-off between return on investment and marketing with emotional intelligence. It is absolutely about a combination of the both, of both of them. So in emotional intelligence, what we've done is when you start to look at social media as a great example of where you can look to for the gauge of emotional intelligence, right? So we created a community, and in that community, this was the Care One case study, where we had a community of over 1 million people who were in debt, and they felt safe to talk about their finances in a community where they typically, this is something that in society,
this is debt consolidation, right? So it's debt. It's like, it's a shameful thing. It's embarrassing, let's say. Yeah.
Yes, and there was a ton of shame around it because, when you go into debt, there's just so much. So whatever your story with money is, your own personal judgment, external judgment, all of that. And so we have this online community with 1 million people, and they're talking about debt. And it started out that people were anonymous in the beginning. And as Facebook started to come in, and as Twitter started to get really big, we started to see this shift of where people went from anonymous to being themselves. And as that started to happen, and we started to measure what the impact of the community was, when we actually just simply provide a forum for you to belong, we found that basically it was over 680% improvement on return on investment of them overall.
Meaning they're more likely to
convert
and become
and become customers, and then they paid better. It goes up from there. It was like they became customers better, they paid better, they actually finished their plans at a higher rate. So the long term value of creating a positive emotional experience was really incredible for them. So, as we look at this in brands, it's like, how do you implement this? Like, what is this actually, let's get to the brass tacks, no BS. What does this mean?
I don't need to host. That was a nice question because one of the things is like, okay, emotional intelligence, so lowest common denominator. On the other end of our ad, there are people seeing it, and they may be depressed. So do we want to leave them even more depressed? The answer is generally no, we don't.
And also, do you think that this one ad is going to leave them more depressed? Probably not, right? So some of it is like we generally don't associate that our one piece of marketing has this huge impact. So I see that as well. And that's true. But
at the same time, like if I say okay, so what does that mean? Okay, well, remove the false sense of urgency, right?
Yeah.
So sale ends in an hour, right?
Right.
But why do people use sale ends in an hour? Because it converts better.
Right.
It triggers that FOMO.
Yeah.
Right? Fear of missing out, and therefore people convert better. So it's like, so where's the balance between,
Yeah. So I think it's a couple of things. I think that the early tests that we're running are on copy, because I think the biggest leverage point that we have in terms of changing messaging and sending out more of a positive message is just simply by writing it. So we're doing copy tests. And what that looks like right now is simply when we've chosen to use something that after I read it, I feel less pleasant than I did when I started, we're adjusting it to feel more pleasant. So that's the gauge.
Right.
Now that might be that I change a headline.
Mhm.
It might mean that I remove some fear messaging, but mostly it's a measure of that I ask of, is this empowering or disempowering messaging?
Good.
Where am I leaving the person?
Right.
We understand that there is a journey of messaging that in order to, you have to create tension to create desire.
Mhm.
So there is a piece of it that's about creating
Yeah.
that tension. And that tension might be, hey, you have this problem you need to solve.
Right.
Absolutely. But at the end of that, I don't need to like couple that with, if you don't solve it, you could lose millions of dollars.
Mhm.
You know, and maybe that's true, but where is the appropriate place to put that? And what is the real, what's the real value in telling? That's not a value proposition at the end of the day. That's just fear.
Right. So let's use a couple of examples, because I know you mentioned the cybersecurity one, so I
Yeah.
want to touch on that one, and then I have health and wellness one that we actually ran a split test on this, so I have the numbers for that. The the cybersecurity one is interesting, right? So cybersecurity. Give me an example of like the fear-based messaging, the ads that we always see in cybersecurity.
Oh, it's all about, you know, like your network's at risk, and
Right,
if you're
yeah.
gonna like everything's gonna be gone, and
Right,
you're gonna be
pay
infiltrated.
huge fine. You have to pay these huge fines,
Yeah,
right?
huge
Infiltrated,
fee,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So I
Huge
read that, I'm like,
liabilities.
yeah, and like there's fear, right? There's
Right.
fear, and does that make me want to act? Maybe it does, right? If I'm a CTO or CIO or a CISO, yeah, I mean, of course I don't want that stuff,
Right.
right? But then how do we shift that? Well,
Yeah.
what do I want?
Right.
Right.
Well, what
so
do
what
I
is
want?
what is the result? So yes, that's not what I want. Correct.
Right.
That's the fear base. What do I want?
Yes,
Right?
exactly. And
So
that's the
secure
question.
network, sleep
Yes.
better at night.
Right.
I don't know, remove worries. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's the.
Show, you know, CTOs on vacation.
There you go.
You know, like it's, I mean, really think about what you want them
There you
to
go.
feel.
There you go.
You know, what you want them to feel is relief.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do they do when they
Right.
feel relieved? They take their vacation, they
Yeah.
play with their kids, like show them the experiences they want more of and how this tool or solution can offer them the ability to do that. So when you're 99.999 gazillion uptime,
Yeah.
I can take a
I can take a
vacation with
vacation.
confidence.
Right.
You know, like it's
Although
a,
anytime our CTO Dave is out of the office or working from home, that's when our internet flickers. Every single time. It's so weird. It's like it knows. That's an inside joke, but it's actually happens. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so perfect transition into the health and wellness one. So we
Mhm.
ran a split test where the landing page. So this is a health and wellness client. They do Eastern and Western medicine, and so this landing page is promoting helping fix back pain, right? Back
Mhm.
pain, lower back pain especially is very very common. And so the only thing we tested was the image, the main
Mhm.
image that you see when you land on the page. And one variation was what you are experiencing now. Guy kind of holding his
Mhm.
back, or gal holding their back, like it hurts, and they're
Right.
they're in pain. And then the other version was hey, I'm on the beach and I'm jumping up and I'm
Yeah.
playing frisbee with my grandkid, whatever it was, right? It was the desired
Yeah.
state. And I think it was 100 and something, 113, 100 and something percent increase in conversion rate.
Right.
Everything else the same,
Yeah.
just the image.
Right. I mean,
Crazy,
this is
right?
like
Thousands of visitors.
we act like this is like something that's like special, but like just think about it. Like just
Yeah.
walk around and talk to your friends and say, what is it that you want?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, almost everyone says they want a vacation. They want more time with their kids.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
want, people aren't saying like, man, I wish I had 20 more hours to put into the office,
Right.
So,
Said no one ever.
right. So, I mean, maybe some entrepreneurs, maybe Gary Vee.
Yeah, Gary Vee says that, right? Gary Vee's like, how can I make more time? He's investing in like time machines, right?
Right.
So,
Hyperloops.
Hyperloops, nice, good.
Right. So like if you know that, if you intrinsically just like start to look at human dynamics, which ultimately is what marketing is about.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get lost in the tools and the tactics. Marketing is about human dynamics and understanding the psychological
Yeah.
state, the emotional state, the mental state, and connecting your product or service in a way that is compelling enough to buy.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
So not understanding the emotional state of your audience is like not understanding the demographics of your audience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think no one will argue with you that marketing and emotion are very
Yeah.
well connected, right? We are looking to influence people using emotion,
Right.
So, but if you have a choice, why not use good emotion? Assuming that, I think no one will argue with that either. I mean, if they are, they're a bad person, right? That
No bad people.
well, you get what I'm saying. I mean, it's saying like if the results are the same,
Yeah.
like why not choose
Right,
the good
yeah.
messaging? But then let's circle this back though to this all starts as us as marketers and our
Yeah.
emotions and our flow state and our
Right.
well-being,
Yeah.
right? And being so, and I think that's where a lot of your study is going because that's the root,
Yeah.
you know.
And also, like, just imagine, like, um, trying to like portray something you don't experience, right? So it's just like, I talk a lot about, marketers who actually aren't their target customers, who think they have these deep understandings of
Yeah.
their target customers, but you're not your target customer. So you really truly can't understand your customer. So this is the same thing, right? So as a marketer, if you don't understand your own emotions, then you actually can't create the emotion predictably in your marketing. And I'll tell you the one that we misunderstand almost 95% of the time when I talk to people about it is fear.
Mhm.
We call denial fear, we call
Mhm.
guilt fear, we call shame fear, we call judgment fear, we call a lot of things fear that are not fear at all.
But couldn't you, all right, now we're getting into the philosophical segment, but couldn't you say that guilt, shame, whatever else isn't that a fear of lack of approval? Like all those.
Intrinsically, yes, but it's all, if you want to get down to the like reptilian brain of it, it's fight or flight,
Right,
right?
that's
Like it's
that's what
like
I'm trying to get
getting
to.
kicked
Yeah.
out of the tribe. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
ultimately that's
approval,
fear,
right.
but like that speaks to the emotional state on whether or not we're in fight or flight or not. Like,
Yeah.
if you're in a place of emotional balance and emotional wellness, then you're not in that fight or flight. You can remove yourself when that fear
Yeah.
comes up, and you can kind of just rest assured and be calm and know that you're not actually in fear. And the truth of it is in this, scientific studies are proving this as well, is that so many of us are living in fight or flight syndrome that the cortisol that's running through our bodies is causing huge health impacts on us. So a part of this for our own emotional well-being as creatives is if we don't understand flow state, if we don't understand the chemical composition of our brains and what happens when we're at work and how to optimize this in a way that we can create balance and wellness in our lives, then, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean we're hurting humanity and then we're hurting ourselves in doing so too.
Unintentionally.
I think it's easy to do. I think this comes also as marketers not comes back, but has to do with some level of effort too.
Yeah.
I think it's generally much easier to use fear-based messaging, let's say, right?
It sure is.
It's just easier. So by default, hey, I got a new client or I'm in a new company, I'm gonna run new ads. They're gonna be fear-based, just because that's what I know. That's what I know has worked or can work. I think it's short-term based. I think you might see a short-term based in result, but I think ultimately it might, in the long term, those results will fade as well as potentially even hurt your brand.
Well, and it comes down to what kind of customer do you want, right? When you attract a customer who's coming from a place of fear, they tend to also not perform well as customers, right? Because they're the customers who complain.
Sure.
They're like sketchy. They, may or may not pay on time. They tend to cancel more, So when you attract from this place of fear, you're actually attracting a customer that you don't want to work with. And it's almost like this desperation that gets put into your money supply, if you will.
It's a short-term versus long-term thinking. It totally
but
is.
if you attract somebody when they're from a place of confidence and they feel confidence in their decision, then they feel confidence in you.
Yeah.
So we also ran another test with another wellness company where we tested emotionally intelligent copy. And while it didn't perform better in terms of delivering more leads, it was actually the same. It was flat. What we found is that the leads performed much better, because they were higher quality leads.
So then your cost of sale, which is ultimately what matters, right? We're closing the loop. Go find a podcast where I talk about that, right? I'm sure there's one or two. That's ultimately what we want. I think marketers should be held accountable to more than just lead gen, right? And lowering cost per acquisition, cost per lead, and more so held accountable to cost per sale as well as retention.
Yeah.
Something marketers don't talk about much or at all in some circles is retention and growing accounts or growing a customers, the frequency in which they buy or the average ticket value. So and I think you can apply emotional intelligence there too, not just with creating new customers, but also, hey, how can I give my current accounts, my current customers, a better experience, leaving them better off, such that in the longer term or even in the short term, they come and they buy more frequently or bigger tickets.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ultimately like emotional intelligence becomes part of the overall UX experience.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
it. So, Nichole, we are running out of time. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's wrap this up.
Okay.
But then you and I commit to running some more tests.
Yeah.
Getting some more people kind of on this bandwagon, talking about it, doing stuff about it, sharing the results, and ultimately making the world a better place.
That's good. Yeah.
You
I
down
love
for
it.
that?
Yeah.
And then we'll come back and we'll share our results, and hopefully influence all y'all out there.
Yeah.
Is that good? You
I'm
have
down.
anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think
It's
that's
good?
it.
All right.
I think we just got
Boom. Nichole, Kelly, everyone, thanks for listening. I'm Arsha Mirsha. This is More Than Marketing. Please subscribe, share this with your friends, like it, do all the good stuff, and let us know what you want to hear about. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Until next time, cheers.